Hi, welcome to Dystrophy Diaries. This is going to be another little solo episode. I've been meaning to do this since before Christmas, but I just kept getting sidetracked and I had lots of wonderful guests on, so I just kind of forgot all about it, but I've consciously wanted to make an effort to do this episode, and it's going to be a bit more of a general story time. I realised that even from the start of this podcast, I've never actually fully told my story and my journey with Limgo and Muscular Shabby from the beginning. And I think when you're listening to a podcast, it's nice to get to know the person that's doing those podcasts. And I think it's really helpful to just hear other people's experiences. I mean, I know I always say it, but when I was younger, I would have really liked to have heard a video like this and heard somebody's story like mine. So, yeah, it's gonna be a bit of a long one. I'm sorry. I'm gonna try and summarize as much as I can and not be too boring. But I guess I'll start from the very beginning, really. Obviously, oh, hi, Bobby. Are you coming in? Right then, okay, sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Come on, sit. Bobby, come on. Deary me. Always gonna be involved in everything. You're like the official little mascot of this podcast. Like, sit down, good boy. Your head. Oh, God. Right, yes. So limb girdle, muscular feet from the beginning. So I obviously was born with limb girdle, but I didn't really have any symptoms until I was about 4, and it started off very mildly. And my mum noticed that I just had a bit of a different run. Like, I'd go slightly onto my tiptoes, and she used to call it my princess run. So make of that as you will. But that was really all there was to kind of indicate anything. And the GP at the time said some kids just, a bit of a toe walker initially, but they grow out of it, so let's just wait and see how she goes. So that's what we did, and nothing much else happened until I was about 7, and my primary school teacher at the time called my mum and dad in and said she's not really keeping up in PE class and she seems to be really struggling. There just seems to be something not quite as it should be when she moves, and I definitely remember finding it difficult. Like, if you're, around my age, I remember those big climbing frames that they used to have in PE, and I always remember I could climb up like the first couple of steps on the ladder, but then I just couldn't pull myself up any further. And I remember I used to really struggle jumping on and off things, like it would really hurt my legs, and I'd always fall over when I'd land. Like, I could never land smoothly. So I went to the GP and I got referred to Alderhay Children's Hospital in Liverpool, which was the start of my journey there, and pretty much, became like a second family to me. But that was the first initial introduction to that life, and I met a consultant that referred me for a full body MRI scan just to see what was going on, and that was where they found that I had a big cyst on the left side of my brain, and it literally looked like I only had half a brain, and it was quite a shock to all of us. I mean, I remember being in this waiting room, sat with my grandma, waiting for my mum and dad to come out. And I remember just like looking down the corridor to my left and seeing my mum and dad come out of this room, and my mum was just beside herself, and my dad was trying to console her. And I just remember thinking, there's something not quite right here. They didn't tell me too much at the time. I mean, I was only 7, so it's like, how much are you gonna understand at that age anyway? I knew I was gonna have an operation. I knew that I had something in my head, but I didn't really know the severity of it. And the funny thing is, like, I'd never had a headache. You know, I'd never been sick. I'd never been dizzy. Like, I'd never had any indication that it was there. It was found purely by chance. And thank goodness that it was, because they told my parents that, you know, that could have burst at any time, and I would have had quite a severe stroke if it had. So, you know, I'm so thankful that I had that MRI and that they found it, because I really don't know if I'd even be here if they hadn't have. So I had that surgery pretty quick, and I had the cyst drained, so I've still got some of the sac in there. And I think it does bother me a little bit. Like, I'm quite sensitive to light, especially when I'm tired. And yeah, sometimes there's certain things I think, is that connected? But it doesn't really bother me, to be honest. And I've only got a little, don't know if you can see it, like a tiny little scar here. I remember that being something I was worried about at the time. I remember the first thing I asked the surgeon was, am I going to lose any hair? Like, are you going to have to shave my hair off? But he did a great job of getting it just right in my hairline. And to be honest, like, I've always really loved my scars, in the sense of I look at them proudly. You know, I look at them to be reminded of all the things that I've overcome and my strength, and I look at them as like battle wounds almost. So yeah, I've never really had a negative perspective on any of them. But that was quite a unique experience. I remember for a few months after, I used to get this really awful, like, whooshings. Oh, thanks, Bobby. Oh, I used to get this really awful whooshing sound in my head when I'd move my head, and oh god, it was horrid. It used to really hurt, and oh, that was grim. But when they did that surgery, they took a muscle biopsy out of my leg because they suspected that I had some type of neuromuscular condition of some sort, but they didn't know what. And I was referred to my neuromuscular consultant, and I met him and I met the team, and they said that they were pretty certain from the biopsy that there was some type of dystrophy in my muscular tissue, but they didn't have a name for it. I didn't actually get my full diagnosis of LGMD1B until I was about 12, because they said it was such a rare mutation of the 1B that it was just really hard to kind of pin it down to just one label, if you will. But initially my main issues were more just mobility. You know, my arms and my legs were affected. My spine a little bit. I started with my scoliosis and my pelvic tilt a bit. But really, I'd say the big issue started when I was about 12, and I started to have a lot of issues maintaining weight. I was burning it off like a crazy amount, and I just couldn't get enough nutrition in to sustain myself. It coincided with when my dysmotility started in my stomach, so eating was very challenging for me. I mean, I've done a previous video all about my nutrition issues, so I won't focus too much on that because I don't want to repeat it, but I just was barely eating anything. It made me feel so ill, and so I just had no interest in food, so I very quickly lost weight and became malnourished. So altogether, like, I was struggling with weight and nutrition, I was malnourished, I was at this point so high on my tiptoes that my ankles were rolling out and my arms had started to bend and I couldn't straighten them at all. So it was all happening in one go, really. And then that was really when I started using my motorised wheelchair, which I hated at first. I'm not gonna lie, I hated having to use a wheelchair at first. I mean, I used to walk until my ankles would literally buckle under me before I would get in that wheelchair, which I look back at, oh, and I feel sorry for myself that I felt that way. I wish I'd have accepted that help more, but at the same time, I think a lot of that stubbornness and determination has been what's really kept me going in life and has kept me as ambulant as I am and has really helped me kind of achieve what I want to achieve in life, because I don't give up and I find a way. Like, once I set my mind to something, I don't give up. So it's a bit of a catch-22 really when I look back at that phase. I really struggled a lot with my feelings at that point. I mean, the only way that I could deal with a lot of what was going on was to shut down. I mean, I was a bit of a blank canvas for a while. I didn't really let people in. I was so scared of letting that wall down because I knew once I did, I wouldn't get it back up again. And I needed to be strong to deal with everything that was being thrown at me at the time. So I had a lot of anger and I was just so frustrated and unhappy in the world. It was only really when I started therapy with a health psychologist at the age of 15 that I really learned to kind of deal with my emotions and started on my journey of acceptance. And I'm so thankful for that, honestly, because it's just helped me become the happy person that I am now. And I'm so appreciative of everything that's happened. Like, I love my life and I feel like I have a really healthy way of dealing with things and approaching difficult situations. And that was really what fueled my love for psychology, inspired me to go into that career, really, and why I love it so much. But yeah, I think it's a really important personal journey, each to their own. But I would always recommend, if you are struggling, or even if you just want someone to talk to about your diagnosis or anything at all, therapy is just such a really great way of learning tools and strategies of managing things, and also just having someone to listen to you that is outside of your inner circle. So alongside all of the nutrition issues, I was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy. I was diagnosed with that around 12 years old, but I didn't really understand much about it. I think my parents kind of kept a lot of that from me. I mean, I used to get palpitations and I knew there was something wrong with my heart, but I didn't really know the severity of it until I got to 16. And by this point, I'd formed quite close bonds with my medical team, and my neuromuscular consultant and my cardiologist at the time both approached my mum and dad and were like, no, we don't feel very comfortable knowing everything, and Zoe not knowing, she's 16. We would like to have a conversation with her about the risks of her heart. And I remember it very well. I was in hospital at the time. I'd been in there for like 3 or 4 months at that point. I mean, from the age of 12 to about 20, I was pretty much just constantly in hospital. I'd go in for like 6 months at a time and come home for like 6 weeks and then be back again with another issue. Then they'd fix that, come home, back again. So it really was more of a home to me than my own home was. So they had the conversation with me while I was in there, and they basically told me that, you know, there is a risk with cardiomyopathy that you can just have a sudden cardiac arrest, with not much warning. It doesn't happen to everybody, you know. It can be very well managed with medication. It can be managed with a device implanted. You know, it's not a definite for everybody, but there is a risk. And I don't think it really bothered me that much at the time. It's going to sound really morbid, but by that point in my life, I'd been so unwell and my quality of life wasn't great that I was just a bit like, if I go, I go. You know, I don't want to upset my mum or my dad or my friends, but you know, I didn't really feel like I had a lot to really stick around for in that moment. So I wasn't really that upset about it. It was only really as I got older and I stabilised and, you know, I started to build a life for myself that it started to bother me because, you know, I didn't want to go anywhere. Quite recently, I had my beta blockers changed and they didn't agree with me, these new ones, at all. And I actually had an incident where I was home alone and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I was very unwell and had to call an ambulance on myself. And it's really knocked my confidence lately. I don't really love being on my own at home. I mean, I'm a lot better now. Like, yesterday was my first full day on my own completely, and I was fine, absolutely fine, which was a real confidence boost, but it does scare me now when I get palpitations or if I feel a bit funny or unwell with my heart, you know, I'm a bit, oh. And I think it is because I just, you know, I don't want anything to happen. I mean, I've got Carl, I've got Bobby, I've got my mum, my dad, my wonderful friends, you know, I've got a lot that I really want to live for and make the most of. And so, yeah, I think it's a difficult journey with cardiomyopathy. But, you know, I've been fine with it before. I'm well monitored. They're not really worried, touch wood, luckily. It's more just about trying to manage the not nice symptoms and keeping an eye on things. So I'm sure I'll keep being more confident with being on my own, and before I know it, I won't feel as anxious about it. But, you know, for anybody else that is having those symptoms, I really wanted to be honest and transparent about it and say it's okay to feel that way. You know, it's not nice having palpitations or any heart symptoms for anybody, like a heart condition or no heart condition. It's very scary, it's very daunting, you know, it's very unpleasant, and it's absolutely fine to not feel okay about that. And I just want you to know that you're not on your own. There's so many of us out there, and there's wonderful charities and support groups to talk to. And honestly, like, you can always come and talk to me. I mean, I like to think I'm quite reachable on social media, so if you watch this video and you feel like I just want someone to talk to, you know, my DMs are always open. I'm always happy to support or just be someone that can listen and that you can relate to. I think it's been quite a long journey. When I look back at some of the situations and, you know, with my nutrition and my stomach and everything. I feel like I lived a lot of life in quite a short space of time and had a lot of experiences that I think really shaped me as a person. I think, it made me very resilient. I'm not easily fazed by things. I think I'm probably one of the chillest people most of my friends now, and it's just because I feel like there's bigger fish to fry in life. I'm not easily stressed by the little things. I think as long as my health is okay, then anything else you can deal with. But I think everybody's journey with any type of muscular dystrophy or LGMD, it's very different, it's very personal. But I really wanted to talk about a lot of my experiences to try and show why I created the podcast and why I'm so passionate about being a voice in the community and trying to raise awareness of the condition. Once I got to about 17, 18, things kind of leveled out a bit. I think once I started on my TPN, got my PICC line, and kind of it sorted a lot of my swallow issues, my stomach. It had all kind of reached a bit of a good level where I felt like I could manage it. I do also struggle with painful bladder syndrome, which is inflammation of the lining of your bladder, which it feels, I essentially get pain there. I mean, I do have regular treatments for it. It doesn't impact the function of it. My bladder functions fine. I don't have a catheter or anything. It's just, I get a lot of pain when I'm next to my medication for it. And that was quite difficult. I mean, that first started when I was 16 and kind of just came out of nowhere. And gosh, when it initially flared up, it was agony. I mean, I pretty much just used to lie down, crunched up, and just sob, in agony, and nothing touched it. I mean, I was on morphine for pain at this point, and it just did not do anything for it. And they tried me on the oxybutynin. I don't know if I've said that right, but that, if you know what it is, that medication. They tried me on the patches on my hip for a while, which I guess sort of dulled the pain out a bit, but it was still quite debilitating, especially with everything else that I had going on. So eventually they prescribed me high assist installations, and they are a bit of a godsend, if I'm honest. They instantly take the pain away and make it feel what I assume a normal bladder feels like. I mean, I can only go off what my normal is, but I don't feel it really, so I'm assuming that's a good sign. I think I'm really proud of where I am now because I look back at all the things that were thrown at me. I mean, losing my swallow, having to relearn to eat. I mean, it took me 5 years to relearn how to swallow, how to eat food properly. And now every single bite of food that I have, it just feels like such a blessing, to be completely honest with you. I mean, Carl always laughs at me because I always overeat. I get too excited, I eat too fast, and then I regret it when it gets so clogged up in my chest and I'm sat there feeling like in a food coma. I do it every time, I never learn, but I just enjoy it so much now that, I can't help myself, I get too excited. But, that alongside the relearning to walk, I mean, I was a toe walker for most of my life, and I remember when I was 15, I was approached by the neuro team and the orthopaedic surgeons who essentially said, we can't make you any worse than what you are. So let's give it a try at lengthening your tendons and see if we can just get you to be able to transfer from your wheelchair into a frame and back. And I remember sitting there thinking, if you're going to give me even remotely flat feet, I am going to walk. I am not going to just transfer. Like, I've been waiting my whole life for this. You know, being a toe walker was agonising, but it was really difficult emotionally, if I'm honest with you. Like, all I wanted was just to be able to even stand with a flat foot, let alone walk. So that having that opportunity was just probably the biggest surgery time in my life, if I'm completely honest with you. And I had the surgery and they lengthened my tendons, and I did very intense rehab. I mean, originally they were like, oh, we'll just do like a little bit of physio each day. And I used to wait for my physio. She's going to kill me when she watches. I used to wait for my physio to leave, and she'd be like, oh, you need to rest now. You're still healing. Do it tomorrow. And I would drag myself out of that bed, and I would just keep practicing to walk. It was a bit of a shuffle at first, but oh my god, I used to just go and go and go, and I was exhausted. But each day, I started to just feel a bit more balanced. Like, it just started to feel a bit more natural to me. And it took a while to build up a decent walk, because I'd been so used to walking on my toes that when they dropped me down, it was a complete shock to like my system. So it took a good while, but I did it. You know, I learned to walk pretty normal, and it was just the biggest like achievement I think I've ever done in my life, and I'm always so thankful now to walk. I mean, walking's got a bit more difficult over the years. I find it a bit more tiring now, and I've developed some compensations. Like, I throw my hip out a lot. I don't turn my core on as much as I should when I'm walking, so I tense up a lot with my neck to try and stabilise myself, which is not good. I'm working on it, you know. I am trying. It's not an overnight fix. But I'm still so thankful that I've got my walk. But after that surgery, I was in plaster cast for about 6 weeks. And I remember in my right foot, because they'd cut a lot of nerves, like they'd done a lot to my leg, so I didn't have proper feeling, and I still don't. Like, it's still an altered sensation. But I remember feeling like I had this blister in, like, at the back of my right leg. Like, it was just this really dull sting almost. And I kept saying, oh, but they were like, oh, well, you know, you've had big surgery, it is going to hurt. And it was the day of getting the cast taken off, and the left one came off fine, no problem. And they went to take the right one off, and it got a bit stuck. Like, the dressing bit, you know, like the fluffy dressing bit wouldn't come off. And they were like, what's going on there? So they soaked it with some saline, and as they pulled off this dressing, it revealed essentially a hole in my leg where my stitches had completely opened up on my heel. And I was sat there looking at it, looking at my tendon inside my leg, and I was just like, what? What is that? What is happening? My poor mum nearly passed out. Like, my poor mum was not in a good way. I was shell shocked. I passed out. Like, I pretty much just went to sleep in shock. Like, I was just like, no, not dealing with that. And so that was another long process of like 18 months of skin grafts. I had to have 2 skin grafts because the first one didn't take fully. I had to walk with this like vac pack for a few months to regrow the tissue because my tendon was fully exposed, and they couldn't just put a skin graft straight onto that. You need a tissue around it. And I remember, God, it was a really hot summer, and I had to lug this big Mac machine around in like a backpack with me when I got my friends. Oh God, yeah, what an experience that was. But the skin grafts worked. It's a pretty small scar now. It doesn't bother me, so I'm very thankful that the team were able to fix that and give me, my leg back and my life back. So yeah, I mean it's been quite an eventful journey in my 26 years of life, but I think I really wanted to share my story so you can get to know me a bit more and know, like, when I talk about things on my podcast, I think if you can feel, I want you to feel like you know me. I want us to feel like a tight-knit community, and I also think if anybody else is dealing with any of these situations, like, if you can get comfort from knowing that I've been there, I'm still in the thick of some of it, and I'm here, like, I'm having, like, I have a happy life, a great life. I'm happy. Like, it does get better. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can get through it. Then that's amazing. That would be really incredible to be able to help people like that. But yeah, I think I still struggle. I think my biggest difficulty is still my nutrition. It's so hard to be able to get enough in that I tolerate without making myself ill. But I feel a lot better. I think I'm in quite a stable place. I'm managing my feeds a lot better. And that's all I can do. You've got to just take each day as it comes, really. I'm working on my physio. That's always going to be me. I'm always going to have to do physio to maintain comfort and even just being pain-free. And I'm very proud of myself for that journey. But thank you for listening. I really hope. I know I kind of went all around the houses there. I could have probably told that story a lot smoother, but I guess this is your way of getting to know me, and I don't really do things in the easy way. But honestly, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed getting to know me a bit more and learning a bit about my story and my LGMD 1B journey, if you will. If you have any questions, feel free to comment or get in touch with me, or if you'd like to see an episode on any specific areas. I think I really enjoy doing these solo episodes, so I'm definitely going to do some more. They're not all going to be podcast related. I'd like to do some more focused on my physio journey. I'd like to do one with my hydro journey and my anti-gravity treadmill. I think that's really interesting. And I really love it. So I think it'd be great to be able to let you all in on that journey. And yeah, so I hope you keep watching. I hope if you haven't subscribed, please do, and join in on this little corner of the internet with me. And yeah, I'll see you soon.